International Storytelling Festival and tonight's Open Hearth, where we gather around the proverbial fire and share stories and music as friends, as people have always done for as long as there's been friends. And we're not just joined here together in the real world, we're also in the digital world online. Tonight's hello, digital world. It's the magical other world, the unseen. So hello to all of our friends all over the world. And just to let you know too that tonight's performance is being filmed. So I need to introduce who we are. We have three incredible artists tonight. One of them is me. Yeah, keep coming. My name's Shona Cowie. I am a storyteller based in Argyll, right on the fringe of the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park, and it is as beautiful as you're imagining. We also have MacIntyre. Martin is an actor and a writer, and he believes that stories can forge deeper connections with people and have real potential as therapeutic tools, and we should trust him because he's an actual doctor, a medical doctor. And he is a Gaelic speaker and an English speaker, and he brings wonder into tales, if they're old, ancient, or brand new, that he's just written. We also are joined by, you may, if you're very clever, have noticed a musician. Yay! He does have a name. This is Fin Moore, and he not only plays the small pipes, he also makes them. So it's an ancient, a very historic craft that it's very precious, and we're so glad that we've got him to carry on these traditions. He performs and teaches internationally, and is often found collaborating with some of the country's most exciting, innovative, and renowned artists, like ourselves, Martin. But without further ado, I'll hand over. Let's kick off. We'll be here for about 90 minutes, more or less, and there is no break, but make yourselves as comfortable as you can. This is our space that we share and we make together, so you do you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Fionn and the mighty warriors of the Fae had been hunting for a long time that day, and it was the time to sit down and have a wee cup of tea. Ossian takes out his tartan third flask and begins to distribute the favoured beverage of the mighty Fae. And they begin to talk about fine things, fine words, fine poetry, fine music. And that discussion about fine music gets a bit deeper. Eventually Fionn says to Ossian, who raised the subject, he says, okay, Ossian, what is the finest music in all the world? Easy peasy, says Ossian. It's the cry of the cuckoo from the tallest branch of the tree on the May morning. Oh, that's a lovely sound, says Fionn. Je faut un plier, machine, says. But what's the finest music in all the world? Well, says Oscar, one of the fiercest ones, it's the clang of the sword on the shield. No, says Diarmid, it's the clang of the sword and the shield, and then when it slips into the flesh of underneath it. Lovely sounds. Says Fionn, but what is the finest music in all the world? He gets great answers. The cry of the lark on a spring morning, the bellowing of the stags across the water, the baying of the hounds and the hunting pack, the gleeful giggle of a giddy young girl, the whispering of lovers in the secret dark. Wonderful sounds, my friends, says Fionn. But what's the finest music in all the world? We're getting a bit exasperated. Okay, they say, okay, Fionn, we've given you our answers. Tell us then, what's the finest music in all the world? lowers his voice, but says very, very clearly, the finest music in all the world is the music of what happens. Answer showing a degree of understanding on a postcard. tell you a wee thing about those tunes. The first one was The Bloody Fields of Flanders, which is a tune that Hamish Henderson, and I noticed his bust up in the cafe upstairs in the hall there, put words to Freedom Come All Ye. And that has a lovely sentiment of kind of togetherness and all equal, which hasn't necessarily worked in this country very well.
maybe one day. But then I went into a tune that Alan MacDonald wrote, and it's called, and this has a similar theme to it. We're all a case, the bunch of us, which kind of seems to fit the theme. And then finishing off with one that jumped over the Irish Sea to Ireland, and it's just named Tommy Hats. So just a wee bit about those tunes. So thanks very much.
I've been lucky enough to perform at Open Hearth for the last 5 years. And at this time of year in the Celtic calendar, we kind of see it as a shift into the new, as the turning of the year into the next time, into the dark season. And so each year I like to use this opportunity to think about the stories that have stood out to me in the year that's been. So one of them that stood out to me, one of my standout memories of this year, was working with the Scottish Youth Park Orchestra. And they are from sort of 7 to 16. So if you can imagine now that there's 50 harpists, young harpists behind me. And do you know what? Harps are amazing. They're not like brass or string instruments that sound awful for a bit. Everything you play on a harp sounds beautiful. And they created a gorgeous, very experimental, playful soundscape to this story. It's a very popular story in Scotland, but for this, I would like you to imagine that you are about 13. Think about yourself then. What did you look like as a 13-year-old?
Spotty.
What did you want, Spotty? What were you interested in? What did you want? You've started to understand just how big the world is, but you're not a kid anymore. And maybe you're still holding on to a bit of belief in magic. So with your 13-year-old selves, I'd like you to lift up now off of your seats up into the sky. We're going to catch a southerly wind. We're going to take it all the way, this warm gust, to the Isle of Skye on the west coast of Scotland. And it's a beautiful day on the Isle of Skye. The sky is blue. The sea is crystal clear. There's this lovely southerly wind we've just arrived on, and it's blowing washing on the lines. There's a little village of houses nestled in the bay. And the young people, yourselves, are very busy. You've got tasks to do this morning. You are chopping the onions. You are gutting the fish. You are hanging out the washing. What else? I'm struggling. What jobs do you do? Is this homework? Homework! Sure! You're doing your homework as fast as you can. It's harvest time, so you're processing the vegetables and the fruit. You're unknotting fishing lines as fast as you can because you've got a plan. This afternoon, you and your friends are taking a picnic to the edge of town. You're going to climb up into the foothills of the Coolin Mountains, where you're going to relax together in the last of the year's sunshine. Did I tell you it was October? Very typical weather for October in the sky today. And that's where you find yourself a few hours later, lying with your friends, with your hair loose, your sun-kissed skin exposed, chatting and gossiping, bellies full of a delicious picnic. There's one in the group, Mirren. She is the most restless, I'd say. She doesn't like sitting still, and soon she thinks, I'm bored. And then she spies not far off a bush. That bush still has blaeberries on it at this time of year. And they're the most delicious blaeberries you've ever tasted. Right, says Mirren, let's have a competition. Whoever can fill their picnic baskets the fastest will win a prize. What will they win?
Wool.
Oh, wool! Wool! And just like that, like it was the World Cup, they're off, scattering across the mountain. Heads down, bums up, picking blaeberries. Some are going in the baskets, but most are getting chucked at each other, and some are going on people's mouths. And Mirren, she's the most competitive. She picks and she picks and she goes higher and higher, picking blaeberries all the time. And in that way that sometimes happens, when your belly's full, when the sun is warm, when you're relaxed, when you're happy, you're in nature, she completely loses track of time. She realizes that she can't hear her friends anymore. She can't see her friends. She can't see anything. A mist has risen all around her. She must have climbed higher into the coolings than she realised. And these mountains are dangerous. There are cliffs. There are ravines and gorges. One wrong foot could have her. So she stays where she is. She hopes it'll pass. But as sometimes happens in stories, when the situation's bad, it's about to get worse. She sees through the mist. Two beady eyes staring at her, coming closer and closer. And another set and another. She is surrounded and her mind is racing. Boggarts and goblins and demons. There's things in these mists and they're coming for me. She closes her eyes and Mirren wishes for a quick and painless death. And she feels a tug at her basket of blueberries. And she manages to make out a baby fawn, a deer. Oh, thank goodness! Oh, thank goodness! It's a deer herd. They've come around her and the mist lifts just a little. She can see them all now, elegantly standing. And a hind emerges through the mists and bows. And all of the rest of the deer, they bow. And then a stag comes forward and gets on its knees, and the only thing you can do in that situation is get on its back. Of course, you know, you've been there. She's taken up safely through the mists with this herd of deer escorting her, like they'd always known they'd find her right there. Up and up they go, and it's a strange mist. It's full of sounds. It's full of tinkling and burbling and laughter and music. Up and up they walk higher into the coolings until they come above the clouds. And the sky is scattered with stars. She's right in the peaks now. They continue walking through a meadow filled with wild flowers to the mouth of a cave. The stag gets on his knees and Mirren falls off. And then he pushes her towards the mouth of the cave. In there. I meant to go in there. She walks in. And it's warmer than she imagined. There's a hearth fire. There's a table set for dinner. There are doors leading off the cave. And right at the back, at first she thinks they're rocks, mounds piled up together. But then one of the piles of rocks speaks. We've been waiting for you, Mirren. How did you know my name? It was the oldest woman Mirren had ever seen. We've been waiting for some time. Mirren is shaken, but she gives the berries to the old woman. Can I stay here tonight? I don't know where I am. I've lost my friends. I've been wandering for hours. The deers, they saved me. Can I stay here for one night and then you can maybe show me the way down the mountain tomorrow? And the old woman smiles. No, not tonight. But if you will, we would like, my husband and I, this is my husband by the way. Oh, hello, how you doing? We would like it if you stayed with us for 1 year and a day. And if you do, we will teach you everything that we have to know. And Mirren, that's an awful lot. And in return, you will work for us. We could do with a strong pair of hands and strong back around here. There's lots to do and we're very, very old. What do you say? And of course, what would any of you 13-year-olds say to a proposition like that? Yes! Can you tell my mum I'm okay? Thank you. And so it is that the Mirren and the Kayak, the old woman, and the Bodach, the old man, start their time together, an apprenticeship. The Bodach is the chef. We're having mince and tatties tonight, is that okay? That's my favourite. I know, good, come on. It's autumn when she arrives, so the start of her apprenticeship is learning about plants. This one makes you invisible. This one, if you cut it up with some tomato and mozzarella, is delicious salad. Here we have bog myrtle. This one can make people fall in love. Every single plant has a property and a power. She learns their secrets. She learns their names. And the seasons turn and it becomes winter. And in winter, the kayak takes Mirren up to the peaks of the mountains. She wears Arctic gear and she has pickaxes. And they talk about the formation of Scotland. This ridge was made by tectonic collision, Mirren. Can you see? She learns all that there is to know about the earth, about how it was made, about its history. And the seasons turn. And in the spring, it's time to learn about animals. The kayak, the old woman claps her hand, and the animals line up to be examined. This is an invertebrate, a slug. It has no spine. Whereas this is a frog, an amphibian. It has a spine, but it's not a mammal. Take my hand. This is not in the traditional version, but it was added by a very enthusiastic 10-year-old. The kayak offers Mirren her hand, and Mirren takes hold. They are whisked up through the sky and land in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Mirren, you're about to see the most incredible example of an invertebrate that I could ever show you. He's a good friend of mine. We're going to his for tea. Here he is, the giant squid. A huge eyeball floats past, and a tentacle waves. Oh, nice to meet you at last, Mirren. I've heard so much about you. The kayak takes out her hand, and Mirren, time and time again, is whisked up through the sky. They go to the Arctic. They see the penguins. They become microorganisms, and she learns how bacteria multiply. They go to the stars. It's incredible. And after almost a year, Mirren can hardly believe her eyes when the leaves are turning and autumn has arrived again. It's time for her to go. And on the very last night of her apprenticeship, the Bodach says, "Aren't you curious about what I do here? Come, I'll show you." And he takes Mirren to the back of a cave, to a pool. "Has that always been there?" says Mirren. Now every day, Mirren, one of her big jobs is to milk the goats. I didn't mention it because that's less unusual than a giant squid. But she's done it, and I forgot. But she's done it every day. And every day they make with this milk crowdie, a type of cheese, a soft cheese. And every day that cheese gets taken to the Bodach, and some of it they eat, and some of it, she doesn't know what happens to it. Anyway, look in the pool, Mirren. And Mirren stares in this pool, this cool pool, and in it she sees things moving. The kayak nearby is adding herbs that they've gathered into the fire, making smoke, making shapes that are reflected in the pool, and more things are moving. And she can see, is that my mum? And she can see, is that a chicken? Things in the pool. And the old man sees the shapes and he sculpts them out of the cheese. Tiny sculptures reflected in the water. And when he's got enough, he takes them out to the mouth of the cave. Follow me. And he holds them out to the sunset. We are the dream makers, Mirren. That's what I do here. And out of the sky come eagles and robins and chaffinches. They take the dreams from this hand. They fly off of them into the sunset. These are the golden dreams, the good dreams. They are going to sleepers all over the world. And then crows, carrion, vultures, hawks, they come and they take the dreams from this hand. These are the nightmares, just as important. The world needs darkness as much as it needs light. And they're taken to sleepers all over the world. And Mirren watches as the tiny birds fly off and become just specks in the distance. And then she turns to see her two mentors, no longer people, but the two huge, towering peaks of the Cuillins. They are the mountain. We are the dream makers, Mirren. That's what we do here. The next day, it's time to go. Mirren is given a cape by the Bodach. It's green, it's long, it's every single colour of the meadow. And she's given a torque by the kayak, a necklace, solid, a symbol of a queen. But the thing is, Mirren, You actually earned that right. Then the deer arrive. They take her back down the mountain, back to where she started this adventure a year ago. She can see her village, and she can see out to sea, where a boat is coming in. And on that boat, a crew, young people just like her, all holding on to the masts and squinting. There she is! There she is! They'd dreamed of her all year. They'd dreamed they'd find this girl here, their queen. Midden, we dreamed of you. We think that you should come with us and join us on our adventure. We're about to sail around the world. What do you say? I mean, what would you say as a 13-year-old?
Yes.
Yes, but of course you need to tell your mum.
14.
You're 14 now. Of course, you're 14. You had your birthday. You're not a kid anymore. And so she set sail around the world. But she had a hug from her mum first. Thank you. I also worked with that story with Fife Libraries on a residency with primary 7 children that are about to start secondary school. And we worked on it for a week, so we really went into each moment and discovered all these possibilities within the story, hence the squid, etc. But from historic, mythic West Coast of Scotland, we're now going to move into medieval, very mythic, very strange world of the Welsh Mabinogi.
That was lovely, fantastic. I've been on a bit of a journey, I think, the last 50 odd years, and one of the focuses of the last 4 years have been Catalonia and Wales, and this book, Rwy I'r Dragon, Running Between Two Dragons, poems inspired by Catalonia and Wales in Gaelic, Welsh, Catalan and English has been one of the results of that. And I suppose my increased affection with Wales, in particular, it's slightly closer than Catalonia, has made me dig a little deeper into the ancient folklore of Wales, and I've been aware of the Mabinogion, or the 4 branches of the Mabinogion, for many years, but never really got to grips with them until this year. So here's a first of the first branch of the Mabinogi. And the man's name, this young lad, is called Pwyll. And Pwyll is the Prince of Dyfed, the 7 counties of Dyfed, and he's got a court in each county. But one of his favourite courts, perhaps his most important court is in Arberth. And in Arberth, the courtiers and the other members of the knights and his family, when they hear his name, they giggle. Not because of the sound of his name at all, but because of what it means in Welsh. Because Pwyll in Welsh means careful, cautious, even hesitant on occasions, and he just wasn't like that. He was over-enthusiastic, on the over-enthusiastic side of feckless. And he just rushed into things without really thinking, without giving him much of a plan, and kind of, followed his instincts and that kind of stuff. He was a young guy with kind of chestnut-coloured hair and maybe a sort of chestnut sort of sonority as well. And he had a chestnut tunic as well to match those 2 attributes. And this day when he set off from the court of Arberth with his horses and his men on horseback was like no other day, was like no different to any other day. He soon outstripped all the other guys on the horse. Hey, come on, wait for us. Nah. And only his hounds, his grey hounds, could keep up with him. And he went under these trees, and in a clearing, what does he see but the stag? Staggering, stumbling towards him and about to fall. It's been hunted by these very, 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 very strange hounds with glistening snow-white coats and the reddest ears he'd ever seen. And his own hounds look up to him and they whimper, he says, no problem. You can on a hunt, there's great meat, we'll get you a feast, don't worry. He dismounts from his horse, shoos the strange hounds away, and ushers his own hounds in to get some of the feast. Then he begins to notice there's some sort of leaves and twigs on his chestnut brown tunic, and he's beginning to kind of tidy himself up and keeping an eye on the hounds who are enjoying this dead venison. And so he doesn't notice this large, very muscular, weather-beaten, regal-looking huntsman who appears on his grey horse. And then when he does, he says, "Oh, sorry, friend, I didn't notice you there, I was kind of busy." "You're not my friend," says the person who approaches. "Why not?" he says. "Because you're a thief." "What do you mean, a thief? You've stolen my hound's meat and you're feeding it to your own ordinary-looking dogs." "Oh," he says, "sorry, I just didn't think. It was just in a spur of the moment. It was all there. They were whimpering. They were hungry. Oh, sorry. Is there anything I can do to make up for that?" He says, "Yes. Something very specific." "What's that?" "You can kill my neighbouring king. He's my enemy. I want you to kill him. A year from today, his name's Havgan. You got that? Havgan. I'd like you to kill him a year from today." "Oh," says Push. "Well, can I have a think about it? Perhaps we should actually introduce ourselves, certainly," says the weather-beaten, regal man with the dark, black hair as black as night. "My name is Arwan. Arwan, King of Anwen." "Could you repeat that, Mrs. Smith?" "My name is Arwan, King of Anwen." "Right, okay, that's what I thought you said. I mean, I get the Arwan bit, it's a bit of a strange name, but I kind of thought I can get that. But the only Anwen I've ever heard of is the other world. I am the king of the other world. You will come and spend a year in the other world, and at the end of that year you will kill my enemy, King Havgan. Are you willing?" I could give it a go. He says, but you know, how am I going to do that? I will transform you in form, character, voice, clothes, in every way to someone of the appearance of me. And I will take your place in David and all the 7 courts and all the 7 districts of David. Do you agree? Yeah, okay. Could you give me just a wee bit more on the strategy side of things in terms of any tips? "Yes, one you must listen to. You will give him but one blow. One blow. Only one blow. He will ask for more, but you will give him one. And you will finish him off that way." "Okay," he says. "Well," says Arwan, "I'm glad you've agreed." Says, "It seems, yeah, but guess it's a bargain," says Puig, for what I did. In a way, he says. "Anyway," says Arwan, "we should get used to each other's horses. We're going to be spending a year on them." Yeah, so they swap horses. And they ride a little forward. And in fact, they find themselves in a matter of a few hundred yards on the very edges of Anwen, the kingdom of the other world. And Puig looks over his shoulders, and there are his own hounds heading in that direction. And who's riding after them? But a young, youthful lad with chestnut brown hair flying in the wind and a chestnut brown tunic. He looks down. My God, he's got these muscles. He's got these massive muscles, and he's got the jet black hair, the colour of night. And he tries out the voice, and it's gone down a good few octaves. Okay, I need to get used to that. And he arrives in Anwen, the kingdom of the underworld. The welcome. I mean, he's never seen such a place. I mean, he's got quite a cool pad in Arbert, but this is just something else. The gold, the sumptuous food, there's a feast waiting for him. He's never experienced the likes, and they treat him with the utmost respect. And he says to himself, yeah, I need to kind of play this carefully. I need to do this the way Arwan would, or I can just Arwan about impetuously. Yeah, I can immediately suspect it's not the main man, you know. So he kind of gets his head around all this. He's enjoying his feast. And who comes through the door but the queen, Arwan's wife? She's absolutely beautiful. And she sits down beside him, and they get on like a house on fire. What a rapport! He's never just never had that kind of relationship with a woman before. You can talk about anything, just within hours, as if they've known each other all their lives. And when they go to bed that night, they continue to talk. And there's a deep feeling of friendship between them. But when the time comes, Pwyll turns from her and faces the wall. And that's where he sleeps that night. That's the position in which he sleeps that night. And that's the position in which he sleeps every night for that whole year of feasting, of hunting, of celebration, of gold and jewels. Been a whale of a time. And then the night before the fight came, and he was feeling slightly less jubilant. Kind of went to bed early with that kind of, stomach churning butterflies you get. You know, imagine you haven't really done the training and you're about to do your first marathon the next day. I might get to the 26 miles, but actually I might not. I might be killed before it. Anyway, he's there really early, up early breakfast, down at the ford of the river, where he's agreed he's to fight Halfgad, and he's there ahead of him. Arwan's knights are with him, and the main knight shouts, "This is a fight between kings. Stand back, all of you, stand back. This is to be a battle between kings. The battle shall now commence." And Pwyll throws Arwan's spear. Now, if he'd actually been throwing that spear at the word commence, it would literally have stuck it just after the little curve of the last E. But it wasn't. He was throwing his spear at King Halfgan, and it went straight through his breastplate, straight through his heart, and he fell headfirst into the river. Oh, I've never seen you, Arwan, before. I've never seen you so fast, so agile. You took me completely by surprise. Your personality has changed. He says, please, I'm done for it now. Just give me one more blow. Picked up the spear, and he remembered Arwan's advice of a year before. No, he says, one blow will be sufficient within a short period of time. Halfgan's men are pulling them dead out of the river. "We have lost our king," Halfgan's men shouted. "Who shall be your next king?" Pwyll shouted. "You shall be Arwan," they shouted. And he went, "Okay." and for all of a day, Pwyll was the king of the two realms of the underworld. Halfgan's half and Arwan's half. Very next day, himself and King Arwan met in the appointed place, and it was beside a sort of a lochan, and you could see each other's reflections of the lochan. And Arwan says, "You did very, very well," he said. "I've heard all about how you got on," he said. "You did very, very well. You were successful," he said. "I knew I could trust you," he said. "And I'm delighted with your progress. And I've heard that you ruled wisely and carefully. And I've heard that you also treated everybody in my realm with the deepest of respect, including my wife." And then they began to look into the lochan again, and they could see that their appearances were changing. They were returning back to whom they had been. And then they parted, and Pwyll headed for Dyfed, and Arwan headed for Anwin, the other world. And when Pwyll got back, he couldn't even wait for him to be dismounted from his horse. He just jumped out himself and he rushed into the great hall, big smile on his face, and he went, Hey, what's happened to you?" He says, "I haven't seen you behaving like this for about a year." "Well," he says, I'm glad to be home," he says, and he tells them all how he spent the previous year as King Arwan in the other world. And likewise, when King Arwan returned to his realm in the other world, it was a great feast, and he had the feast. And when he and his wife retired very early to their chamber that night, and when he began to shower her affection, she said, "Hey, it's been a while," she said. "In fact, I'd say it's probably been a whole year," she says, "and I'll tell you the truth, I was beginning to get a bit worried." "You mean nothing?" he says. No, "You've not been interested in me for a whole year," he said. Of course, he had to explain to her, who had been sharing her bed for that whole year, that it had been Pwyll, the Prince of Well, he has been an honourable man. He has respected me as your wife for this whole year, she said. And for that very reason, Arwan, he put the title, Puich Pen Arwan, Puich, the head or the chief of the other.
Well, I think I'll head over back over to Ireland actually, and you were all very good at imagining being 13, so I'd love you, or 14, but I would love you to imagine that I've got 3 friends here who also play pipes, because the set of pipes I'm playing here is actually a set that I made to play in a quartet of pipers, especially made them, and it was quite the start of the group happened with my friend Breacher Campbell, who phoned me up and got me excited about the idea of making this chanter in a key that we'd never made before. And then we were chatting back and forward about 45 minutes, and I was kind of thinking about it and thinking, yeah, it's probably all possible and doable, and yeah, I think, yeah. And she goes, do you think you'd be able to do it for next week? But she'd drawn me in, and I was really excited by the idea of doing it all, because she wanted it in a week's time to play on a telly programme with Tiernan O'Dinkin, who's also in the group. And so I actually did manage to do it. I took an old chanter that I'd kept in the workshop. I'd made a big mistake on it, and the last bit that we do is we drill the finger holes into the chanter. And the phone rang halfway through, and I answered the phone. I went back to the chanter and drilled a hole in the same place as the one before, so it didn't have the extra notes. So it basically made 2 notes the same. So that was a bit of a shame for that chanter. But I kept it for 12 years, partly to remind me not to do that again. And I always thought one day it might turn useful. It might be useful. So, and it did. I ended up drilling lots of new holes and filling holes and kind of making the plan for this wee chanter. So a couple of years after that, we decided to make a quartet, and I had to get her chanter back to make my own one. So they're just part of all the fun and games that you have making pipes and doing things like that. So I'll play a set of tunes that we play in that group, and it's great. I think playing in bagpipe quartets, I'm playing another bagpipe quartet, and I think on average we'll do about a gig every 3 years. In both groups, which will be a good amount of time that we will actually be really excited to see each other again. Excited to play the music and things like that. So we certainly won't be tired of each other anyway. So I'll play a set of tunes. Starting off with a Scottish tune called The Kitchen Maid, and then into 2 Irish ones, one called P. Joe's, and then Fog in the Bog. So we've had a couple of mentions of fog and things like that. So. tune, Shona. Pipe tech here. So that was a set of Scottish small pipes as well, and I'm going to move on to another type of pipes that we make in Scotland. Border pipes or real pipes are also played in the Highlands of Scotland. And I'll play another wee slow number to begin with, and then into some spades and reels. And I'll start off with a well-known Burns song, Western Winds, and then I'll see where I go after that. It's always exciting when you're playing on your own and you don't have any arrangements or anything. Halfway through that last set, I was thinking, should I tell? There's a tale. The last gig we did within B, where one of the members forgot their B chanter, which was quite an important bit to be in the group in B, and had a very exciting time. 24 hours from noticing that she didn't have her B chanter to the gig, trying to make a B chanter up. So yeah, so but. I wasn't going to tell that story, and I even mentioned she, so, and it was a Scottish one as well. Here we go, Western.
Wales. Back to Puig. But a few more years later, again at the court of Arbert, his famous court, his favourite court. And they had a big sumptuous meal that day, and his belly's full. He says, let's go for a walk. You know, see that hill just beside us, just beside the court, called Gorsedd Arbert, he says. The throne of Arbert. I've always wanted to go up there, sit at the top. The view must be good. I don't know why I've never gone. Oh, said some of his advisors. So you have to be careful. If you sit on Gorsedd Arbert, the throne of Arbert, one of two things might transpire. You might be hurt or injured, or you might see something rather strange. Oh, he says, you know, after the fight with Afghan and all that, you know, I'm not afraid of being hurt or injured, and you know, I wouldn't mind seeing something strange. Things have been sort of got back to normal these last few years. Let's go. Anyone want to come with me? A few of his knights and courtiers accompany him up the hill to Gorsedd Arbert. As soon as he sits on the top, a strange sight appears. An absolutely beautiful, strange sight. The most gorgeous woman you've seen riding past on a pale grey horse. And she's riding in a very relaxed manner. No hurry whatsoever. So he says to one of his fastest runners, run after her. There's a reason she's here. There's a reason she's come. Run after her. Ask her to stop and ask her why she's here. The guy begins to sprint after her. You know, he's a pretty fast runner. But still, this beautiful woman maintains her distance just ahead of this very fast runner. For goodness sake, he says, what's the state of the runners in Arbert these days? Get back to the court, get a horse, ride after her. She's got some reason for being here. Ask her to stop and tell us. Guy saddles his horse, immediately runs after her, rides after her, fast as the wind. But still, this beautiful woman in her pale grey horse maintains a very leisurely and comfortable distance ahead. Okay, that's it for today, he says. Push. I'm going home to think about this. And he thinks about it all night. Next morning, he gets up first thing. He says, I'm going, and I'm taking my fastest horse. Anyone want to join me? A few of them go up and join him. And he sits on the throne of Arbeth, and he's just hoping that the same strange thing will appear as happened the day before, and nothing, they won't be injured or hurt. He's delighted to see this beautiful woman riding past. And he begins to go. Now, if the previous horse was going as fast as the wind, he was like the lightning, you know, after. Still, this beautiful woman maintains the safe, very relaxed distance ahead of him. And he's exasperated. He says, excuse me, my lady, would you please stop? She immediately reins in her horse and says, of course. Why didn't he ask me that? Why, he says, I just kind of got into the chasing thing, I just asked me, I would have stopped. He said, who are you? My name is Rhiannon. I would call you the beautiful Rhiannon. Puig says, oh, thank you very much, she says. And I'm sad, she says, Puig. Oh, you know my name? Of course I know your name. I come from Anwen. The other world, he says, yes. And she says, I heard about your exploits with Arwan helping in Arwan's realm, and how well you acquitted yourself throughout that whole year, and how respectful you were of everyone in the whole realm. And she says, I am sad, Puig, Prince of Gwynedd, Prince of Dyfed, because, she says, I am to be married off to a rich man I don't want to marry, called Gwal. Don't want to marry him at all, but my father's come into this agreement with him. She says, and I will have to marry him or somebody like him, i.e. somebody I do not love, if you reject me in marriage. Oh, says, well, that's what you... Yes, that is why I have come, to see if you will be willing to marry me, or do you reject me in marriage? No, says Puig, not at all. No. Well, that's cool. I feel really good about that. Can we kind of get on with it quite soon? She says, I'm sorry, no. She says, Dad's a bit of a stickler for kind of customs and mores and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be a year from today, she says. A year today you will come to my father's house. My father is called Heavy the Old. Yes, yes, absolutely. I'll come there a year from today. I'll see you then, says Rhiannon. And there'll be a wedding feast prepared for us. A great feast will be prepared for us on the day that you arrive in the house of my father, Heavy the Old. And they're just about to part, And Puig says, directions. He says, don't worry, I'll message you near the time. Well, that was the slowest year in Puig's whole life, especially days 362, 363, 364. They were absolutely interminable. But finally, a year has passed and he heads to the court, the house of Heavy the Old. And sure enough, Rhiannon was absolutely true to her promise. There was this lavish feast prepared for him. And kind of the way it worked then, my understanding is correct, they did all the feasting first. It was kind of more of a prenuptial was the feasting and all the speeches and all that, and the wedding itself was really just kind of a blessing towards the very end of the night, and then the two of them, go to the same bedroom together. So they'd had all the feasting, they'd done all the eating, and it was customary at the very, very end of all this to give out gifts. It originated when those who were less fortunate would receive gifts from the more fortunate marrying couple. And they'd all been distributed, and this tall man in silk clothes appears. And he says, I would like my gift. By this stage, Puig's giddy, excited. He says, you can have anything you want, sir. What does he say? I want Rhiannon's hand in marriage. And she's got her head in her hands. Oh, Puig, why were you just so direct in your question, so naive? That is gold, she says. That's a guy I do not want to marry, the guy I would least want to marry in this whole world. He says, but he can't marry you, it's a wedding feast. No, you don't understand. That's the custom. You've made a promise in a public place, my father. You wouldn't stand for anything more. But she says to Gual, but you will not marry me tonight because there's another custom in the land, and that land suggests that if a wedding feast has been prepared for one couple, that same wedding feast cannot be used for another couple. So you may come back at a later date, and Heavy the Old chips in. Make it a year from today. So Gual reluctantly accepts that and disappears. And just before Puig heads back to Arbert, she whispers in his ear, as if to say, I'll see you in a year from today as well. And she gives him this small leather sack. Take that with you. You'll need to use that a year from today. And don't come alone then. Bring a few pals. Okay, he says. I was trying to work out whether the second year would be slower or faster passing. I reckon it would be actually faster passing than the first one, the expectation. But anyway, it does pass. It heads off, and sure, she's true to her promise. There's this wedding feast all prepared for the marriage of Rhiannon and wow! And it's getting to near the end when the gifts have been gone. And Puig, who by the way took more than a few pals, he took 99. And they go to the back of the house, and he gets these out of the sack. He takes this cloak, a beggar's cloak, an old raggedy beggar's cloak with a hood, puts it over his head, and he gets these old boots, and he puts them on. He gets a horn, puts it around his neck. Oh, and the leather sack, he puts that under his belt, and he's the last to enter the hall to ask for his gift from the couple to be. And Gual says, what would you like? What present would you like? He says, oh sir, you can have what would be reasonable, says Gual. Well, sire, he says, the old beggar man, he says, all I ask is you fill my small leather bag with food. Fill it to the brim, pray sire, if you ever will. That's it, says, well, that's easy. And he orders for the various plates to be emptied. There's meat, there's bread, there's fruit, and they empty into the sack. It's still not full. Bring some more. They bring some more. It's still not full. More. What's wrong with the sack? Says, well, it will not fill. Oh yes, sorry. I said, an important man must actually stand in the sack and say, and trample the food and say, there is now enough. Because he's had a few bevies, he's at his wedding, he just jumps straight into the sack, begins to trample the food, and as he's trampling the food, tweaks it up over his head, ties it in a knot, blows his horn, and the 99 men come in, and as soon as 99 men come in, they begin to kick this sack, and I believe that is the first ever instance of the game Badger in the Bag. They're kicking the sack. Oh, let me out. But we're not going to let you out until you promise you're not going to marry my love, the love of my life. Oh, okay. So they let Gual out on the basis that he's going to give up his desire to marry Rhiannon, and they let him escape back to his lord, to his house with all his men. And finally, he looks into Rhiannon's eyes and says, surely now we can be married. And heaven the old shouts, a year from today. Only kidding.
Into reality a little. This is a performance that I created for a show called Women Who Give No Fucks. How old are you?
52.
And for a brilliant company called Story Jam, and they've created this kind of slightly competitive format where different female storytellers pretend to compete, telling stories of historic and mythical women who give no fucks. And it's wonderful and it's celebratory, and we did it in Glasgow, one of the best cities in the world, I think. So, I want to tell you about one of Glasgow's most important people, in my opinion. But I've got a little game to play first. It's called the statue game, and I made it up. It starts like this. You tell me, how many statues, roughly, are there in the public sphere in Glasgow, the public space?
100.
Oh.
392.
Nice. It's about 460. Okay. How many statues are there of unicorns in the public space? Scotland's national animal.
20.
60. Around 60. How many statues of men called James are there?
45.
Close, 30, 34. How many statues of women are there? 5. And 2 of them are Queen Victoria. The most recent statue of a woman was erected in 2018. Can anyone, bonus point, gold star, tell me who that was?
Mary Barber.
Yeah! Mary Barber, one of Scotland's and Glasgow's mothers. So, I'll tell you her story. It starts in 1915. A quarter of Glasgow's working-aged men had signed up to fight in the front lines. A quarter. I think that tells you a few things. One, the deep sense of civic duty that Glaswegians have, but also it maybe tells you how bad the living circumstances were in Glasgow at that time for working class people. That was the highest sign-up rate, voluntary sign-up rate for any city in the UK. So with a quarter of the men gone, that left jobs deficits. But Glasgow is an industrial city that at that time was ramping up for war manufacturing. And so the factories created more jobs. An influx of people came to Glasgow, 70,000 from the UK, all over and further afield. And how many homes did they build to accommodate? It was about 1,000. 1,000 homes for 70,000 new families. There simply wasn't anywhere to put them. Enter the war profiteers, the Glasgow slumlords. It's a simple issue of supply and demand. There's more demand at the moment than there is supply, and so it's business. It makes sense to raise the prices of the rent. The rents were inflated by 25%. And to get a new lease on a tenancy, you had to pay a year's rent up front. Could any of you afford that right now? This was well above what an average working person could afford, and completely unthinkable for the now many single mothers whose husbands were working, fighting and dying on the front lines, and they were the easy targets. If they couldn't pay their rent, they'd be evicted. And this isn't the kind of you get a letter and a month's notice evicted. This is your doors kicked in the middle of the night evicted. And you're dragged from your bed by your ankles, pulled through the close by your back. This is your nightie riding up on your chest. This is, that kid is screaming, shut it up. It is your clothes and your belongings thrown out of the window evicted. This is, it's raining and where's the baby's blanket? And there's men waiting to take anything they can sell. There is nowhere to go. That kind of evicted. But the factors and the bailiffs, they hadn't reckoned with one thing. You don't mess with Glaswegian women. Mary Barber was organising with the Glasgow Women's Housing Association. She would stand on street corners with her neat jacket, her long dress, her hair piled on her head. She's a very precise woman, very neat. She could be from Edinburgh. But she was much louder than Edinburgh. And she would explain to the people in words they understood about the injustice happening on her doorstep, on their doorstep. You will take your rent check, you will score out the ludicrously inflated price, and you will write in a price you find appropriate. That you will give back to your landlord or your factor. If they refuse, well, then you refuse to pay. The Glasgow rent strikes begin. Posters go up in windows. We fight for justice. My daddy's fighting in France and I'm fighting the baddies back at home. No more clearances in Scotland. 24-hour armed guards will be positioned in each close. And should the factors arrive, well, they're welcome to try. Women would be positioned outside the doors with their arms rolled up all hours of the day. They'd have beside them a spoon and a pan. And if a landlord or a bailiff arrives, the alarm would be raised. Women! Women! Every single door in the close would fly open 3 a.m., 6 a.m. with missiles to pelt at the invaders. Rotten apples and full nappies. Get back, yes, skirt! Off they'd go, flying off into the distance, into the night. 20,000 people were in rent strike in Glasgow. They were getting somewhere. They were winning. But at some point, Mary Barber heard about a young woman whose husband had died on the front line. His pension hadn't arrived yet. And so in order to pay rent that the landlord had told her everyone else had paid, they had not. She sold everything she owned. She sold her forks. She sold her baby's toys. She sold her wedding ring to afford rent this month. She couldn't afford it next month, let alone any food for that time. And when Mary Barber heard this, she takes a walk to the Glasgow factories, to the steelworks at Parkhead. She lets herself into the forecourt, to the factory floor, and she makes her way up the steps onto the balcony, looking out over the factory floor, to the aisles of machines clanking and whirring with their sparks flying, men sweating like a cathedral-sized space. And she pulls a little whistle that stops the work. Men, I don't care where you're fae. We're all fae somewhere, and you're Glaswegian now. And your sister needs you. Her husband died fighting for your freedom. Will you stand in for him now? Will you stand for her? That afternoon, Mary Barber arrives at the factor's office. accompanied by 500 steelworkers who haven't bothered to wipe off the grime and the sweat from their muscly bare arms. And they stand outside the factor's office and just look at him. And barricading the road's entrances are prams and women with their babies. There's no getting out for this factor. Mary and the young mother have a very quick meeting, and the issue of the rent is resolved very swiftly. The men make the woman a ring, a steel ring, which they say will never replace what she lost, but might remember what she was made of. 100,000 people marched with Mary Barber across Glasgow Green, campaigning for rights for renters. And the government have to listen when it's that loud. Because I don't know if you've ever tried arguing with one Glaswegian. Imagine 100,000. Soon they freeze rent at pre-war levels. And the Addison Act is passed, which introduces council houses for the first time in the UK. And Mary Barber doesn't stop there. She opens the first family planning clinic in the UK with her husband, who's a pharmacist. And she manages to raise enough funds so that it's entirely staffed by female nurses and doctors. Completely unthinkable at the time. And then she goes on to become one of the UK's first female MPs, alongside 4 other women from the Glasgow Women's Housing Association. She is the most formidable woman, and we should all know her name. So if you don't mind saying it with me, Mary Barber.
Mary Barber.
And her spirit is alive and well in Glasgow. I don't know if you heard about Kenmure Street in 2019. Oh, it was in 2021. When the Home Office launched a dawn raid against one of the city's most vulnerable people. And the people of Glasgow, they came out in their hundreds. They lay under the van of the dawn raid of the Home Office. And they barricaded the van in. They were not going to let him go. So, remember her. Remember each other. Thank you very much.
Amazingly strong woman, amazingly well told. Thanks very much. I'm going to stay with the theme of the First World War and do something unconventional at storytelling. I'm going to read a poem, and I'm going to tell the story first of all of the poet. I've written 6 poems about this poet from the north of Wales called Hedwyn, or as he was originally called, as he was baptised, Ellis Humphrey Evans. He grew up in a farming community. 1887 was his date of birth. A large family. He did his bit of work on the land, but he really loved poetry. Poetry was his passion. And when the First World War broke out in 1940, he didn't want to go. And in a way, he was able to not go because he had responsibilities on the farm. But then, when he saw that his younger brother was coming of age to go, that he would have to go, he went instead. And of course, the inevitable happened in the Battle of Pilkenbridge in 1917. He was killed. But he had been named earlier as Hedwyn, and it's his bardic name that means white or saintly peace. Hedwyn, peace, and wyn in this context means white or saintly. That had taken place in another Gorsedd. We had talked about the Gorsedd Arbeth earlier, and it's got a broader term that means getting your bardic name, which still goes on in Wales at a local level and also at a more formal level at the Eisteddfod. But he got his in 1910 in a place called Prinnymaes, a few local poets also at the same time, and one more senior poet, and he was offered this name, and he apparently accepted it. And I guess it's ironic him being a pacifist as to what subsequently happened. And his house was kept exactly as it was by his uncle Gerald well into the century before handing it on to the care of Snowdonia National Park. And you can go and visit his house and see some of his chairs, the beautiful chairs that he won at various Eisteddfodi, including the black chair, which he won in Birkenhead in 1917, September 1917, having fallen in Battle of Pilkin Bridge in the July of that year, that his poem had been sent in advance. So as I said, I was fortunate to visit Wales in early March 2020, just before the pandemic. Got a number of poems, including about half a dozen inspired by Hedwyn. And this is one which is just simply called Hedwyn. And I'll read it in Gaelic first and then in English. Hedwyn, she-girl move. Lishnach jech lishi jeetje, ha doode goloch na meidje. Smere hachad, son a brenny mais chlan, ringig a gorsed. A hook de heen, is Kate o heen a lonju, is adu mis na barst. Son ankutjoch gevastje gejiorst, agus kju bejel na movie, hatchini duut, is sku plemas, is doet en bemlich to cool. Getach de lawadu ditje, but other loch, or elwach mar a vow an the golostje na. Koers ik in vuilum se giai, it a chelrius is rianig, perken en trummer, porrach a hutjer, is anos eentje in doen in de stredie, a varach is trubbet delmach, an de gushting is clear. Hedwyn, white or saintly peace. Since the weather took a turn, the lake of the maidens wasn't reached, and as it happened, it was in Brinny Mize and Llan where the Gorsedd took place, awarding you your degree, the right to name and count yourself among the bards. It was there also you were baptized peace, and whether that peace was white or saintly, it pleased you, and your beatific slim face, though you spoke not a word at the edge of the water, well acquainted as you were with nature's college, its courses and exams between tight moss and root, the rich, fertile fields of its teaching, and minds unease ever struggling, plus the weight of romancing on the vessels of the heart. Thank you.
I think just one wee bit of time left for one last wee tune, and I'll start with a slow tune. It was actually one that I learnt this year for two very, very fine singers that we lost, and I had the privilege and honour to play at their funerals. And it was actually written by one of their other bandmates. And so the band was Jock Tamson's Bairns, and yeah, fantastic band. Like very sad to lose Rod Patterson and John Kroll this year. So I'll play this tune, and I guess, you know, thinking of all the folk who fell in the wars, and then hopefully lighten things up a wee bit to finish off with a tune that my father wrote, and it's maybe got the right sentiment for everybody, and he called it Farewell to Decorum. Finish off with that. But thanks very much, everybody.
strange riders and maybe some birds flying around that. But it's wonderful to be here together. It's a special thing that we can be in the same space sharing some stories. And it wasn't that long ago that we would have dreamed of being able to do this. So thank you again, and we hope you come to check out the rest of the programme. There's loads of stuff for the next week. Yeah, and thank you very much.